Morning, everybody. How y'all doing today? Good? All right. Well, it's a beautiful day out here. It's just beautiful out here. It's cool. It's still morning time. And I'm going to come out here. I'm going to take that half link out of that Kickstarter, see if I can't get that dialed in. And then I may toy around with that exhaust a little bit. But before I do that, I want to show you what that exhaust has done to me. There you go. You can see that burn on my leg. Remember how I said, oh, I touched it. Oh, I touched it. Well, that's what I got. So, that's what I'm up to. And stick around. I'll show you what I get done after I get a few things done. Alright, hang in there. Well, guys, I took that half link out of that chain, and I could not get it to go far enough to hook up. So I ended up having to put it back the way it was. And I found that the bearings I used in that assembly are crap. And they've just got all kinds of slop in them. I think if I get some good bearings, it'll alleviate my problem. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I think you can see in there. Can you see that wiggling? They both do that. It's not much, but it's enough. It's just sloppy. So, yeah, I'm thinking some new bearings, some good quality bearings, and those would make all the difference in the world. And that's probably all I'm going to do with that thing today. But I think I might mess around with that exhaust some. You guys remember me telling you I could still feel a puff, puff, puff coming out of the side of this? Well, if you look right there, there's your evidence. See if I can zoom in on that a little bit. See how it's black? There's a pinhole leak there. That's what I was feeling. You can see where the exhaust has come out there and blackened it. Now that pinhole right there, that's what I was feeling. So I'm not crazy. Well, maybe a little, but at least I was right about that. Can you figure out what I got going on here? Let me know what you think that is. I'm going to leave you with that. See you, everybody. Bye-bye. Alright, here's how the plan is. Using the stock muffler's flange bolted to the motor with the stock muffler unbolted, I can use that flange to mount my new exhaust system to it. Just because it's easy. I've already got the angle there and I know it fits and it comes up level. Then I went to the pipe bender and bent a piece that will allow me to divert the exhaust back under the seat, down, and back out the back without burning me. And I'm going to use a bigger piece for the actual tailpipe. And what I did is I cut 6 slots in it. That's 1-inch tubing. This is 1.5, 1.25, 1.5, and I cut 6 slots in it so I could put the 1-inch tubing in it, and I pounded every other one in. And then what I can do is come along and shave these down with the grinder to where when I push them down, they will fit inside that little gap that's left over. And then weld that all up. And you know what these are. These are your fishtails. And I took them and I cut them out the shape. I drew the shape I wanted, cut them out to where they matched. And then I put them in the bender up underneath the supports and turned the shoe this way. So it already had that curvature like that. And I just pressed it up a little bit to give it a little bit of bend. And getting them, I could only do one at a time, so getting them the same is tricky. And then I cut the slot out of the tail so the exhaust will actually go into the fishtail a little bit. You know, they'll weld on just outside of that slot. And that's pretty much how I got my start. So I'm going to proceed to fine-tuning this stuff and putting it together. Yeah, I think you saw that I've made my own flange mount. And this hole is the same size of pipe that is actually coming out of the exhaust flange from the stock motor. And the 1-inch pipe will go just around the outside of it, and I can weld it on there. And I should have enough gap here to where my weld won't interfere with my nuts and bolts. But we will see. See how I have my shoe turned? And then I put it up underneath there. And just because by the graces of the powers that be, at the width that I cut this, it rests underneath this beam on both sides. And I was able to jack the bottle jack up and put just a slight bend in them, both of them. I had to redo that one because I didn't have it the same, but now they're very, very close, and I'm good with that. I made my rear support to go over the rear axle out of a piece of 1/8-inch steel, a little 5/8 hole in it, put a 90-degree curve in it, or really close to that. And it will just hang out and sit underneath it, and then I'll weld it onto the bottom of the muffler. And I have an extra nut from the other axle that Dizzy sent me. Thank you, Dizzy. You've been a blessing upon blessings, my man. I thought you might like to see this part. I took the little giant Dremel and slotted out those extra fins that were sticking up. And then I can just tack them down into place. Let me get you over here so you can actually see what that looks like. There's a pretty good view of it. Just enough I can slide it in and out. And has a short little gap to fill with weld. Not too bad. Of course I have to fill all these slots too. But it'll have a nice taper to it and it shouldn't look too bad. So I slotted out my end pipe and I massaged it down with a flat disc to get it flat and as level as possible so my fins will match to it without too many gaps on the edges. I got a little bit of a low spot here that I'll have to fill just because I cut it poorly. But anyway, such is life. And then we come over here just inside the garage, which I have found I get better welds if I plug directly into the wall. If I try to use my little extension cord, I don't get as good of welds. So I'm going to try to do all my welding in here from now on. I've known that. I don't know why I don't practice it. But anyway, I tack welded it right here on there and there. Got to straighten it up a little bit. That's just to hold it together on the tops while I position it on the pipe and tack weld it in place. And yeah, there's a big gap running down the front here because it's hard to get curves to fold to where they mate. I'm sure there's a way to cut them to where they do, but I'm not sure about that. I didn't take the time to figure all that out. I'm just going to fill it with a weld and hope for the best. See how pretty we can make it. Anyway, next step is to set the pipe in there and weld that on there. I think it'd be easier to weld on there now. That way I can get it straight up and down when I tack weld it together on the bike. There's a look of it in process. I've got it welded to the pipe, and I'm trying to fill this big old gap in here. Just repetitious use with the welder, just filling that up, stacking them in there, and it is ugly, but I'm getting good penetration, I think, and it's filling in pretty well. It's just time consuming. I'm about halfway done with it. Let me show you what that looks like. There it is. Nice, huh? It'll all clean up. That was the biggest hole I've ever filled with a welder. Here's a close-up of inside. Let me show you the front. Pretty ugly, isn't it? And I'm sure when I go to cleaning it up, I'll probably find a few spots that need touched up. But yeah, it's going to be some grinding there, boy. Get that purdied up. Things we do for fun. Jeez, what a mess I got myself into this time. I could have cut a plate and welded it on there, but then it would have been flat. And that's not what I'm after. Anyway, I'll show it to you after I get it cleaned up. I'm going to have to definitely clean that up before I weld the assembly together, because that'll be a bear to try to do work with that with the pipe welded to it. Well, fellers, what do you think of that? Does that look like it'll work? It didn't actually come out bad. It is not going to take much to clean that up. I do see daylight through a couple, two little pinholes I can see daylight through, but that's not bad. Alright, so just sharing the experience with you. Let me know what you think of that.